The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another DirectionsMag Geospatial webinar. I'm Barbara Duke, Editor-in-Chief here at Directions Magazine, joined by our webinar producer, Lynette Qualia. We are excited to have a talented team with us today. Scott, Sean, and Ryan have some great tools to share with you that will get your team migrated with all the nuts and bolts that are hiding down under the hood. So, Scott, over to you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Barbary. Over the past 8 or 9 years, it's been my pleasure to work with the folks at the City of Austin. They've been using Vertige's technology extensively over that time and have a real wide variety of applications, internal and external applications. And they're always doing things to kind of push the technology and doing interesting things with it. And on a recent call with their GIS team, Sean McClurkin, who's been a power user at the city for that whole length of time they've been using the technology, was mentioning that they had been moving some domains and subdomains around, and that Item Manager was a real lifesaver for them. Now, Item Manager is a free product that we provide, and as it's a free product, we don't spend a lot of time promoting it. And I have had good feedback from it over the years, and people really like using it. But nothing matched Sean's enthusiasm for it. He said that it was an absolute lifesaver for them and saved them dozens and dozens of hours that would otherwise be spent kind of searching through ArcGIS Online and portal items to make sure that this subdomain, the domain to subdomain change worked smoothly. So we dove in a little bit deeper on it, and we thought that we would make an interesting webinar and to show people how the city actually used this and how it saved them so much time. And thankfully, Sean agreed to put something together. So I hope you find this interesting, and I will pass it over to Sean to take us on a journey of how they used Item Manager. Sean.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for coming to our webinar today. Our topic is how the City of Austin used Vertige Studio Item Manager to help us migrate from one domain to a new subdomain. Our City of Austin infrastructure people wanted our GIS applications and services to move off of the main City of Austin domain of www.austintexas.gov and onto a new maps.austintexas.gov subdomain. And so what did that mean? Well, apart from, of course, the obvious of moving all of our applications and map services and all of the main service infrastructures and application infrastructures to the new domain, once we started operating and testing our applications, it became clear very quickly that we have some more cleaning up to do. So here's one of our more straightforward applications in GeoCortex. And right out of the gate, we get a license warning when we know that our Vertige Studio license is perfectly fine. But why doesn't this application think so? And if we look at our console, well, we can see that it's trying to make a request to the old domain. And so where is this URL coming from? Well, most people familiar with GeoCortex will know that most likely there's a workflow running at startup. And when we go in, sure enough, we have a workflow running at startup. And what is this workflow? Well, I won't bore you with finding out because I know the answer. The answer is the ARR startup workflow for our ARR profile tool. So right out of the gate in here, I can see I'm running a workflow here. I'm also running a workflow here. And how do I get to these workflows? Well, if this name is correct, which I'm going to pretend like it is, then let's first of all look at the startup workflow. And if we go to AGOL, right out of the gate, we can see that this URL isn't correct. But can I edit the URL here? I really can't, I don't think. So I could go into the details here. If you know where to go, it's easy. And I can change that to maps and save it. And now, if I relaunch my application, do I still get a license warning? I do. So then this address search workflow might still have a problem. So if I go in here and open up my address search workflow, don't mind my dog off to the side here, then of course this has got all kinds of places to go. Where are all the workflow calls in here? You could spend a lot of time drilling down and finding out, okay, here's one, and quickly get lost in the weeds. So it would make sense, since these are ArcGIS Online items, to go to the ArcGIS Online Assistant that ESRI provides. And I have a lot of items in here. And if I wanted to look inside, say my address search workflow, then I can select I want to view its JSON, click on it, and now I'm seeing inside the AGOL item directly. And here are some paths that need to change. Can I edit those here? Well, the short answer is there's an edit button, but it's untested and unsupported, and I don't really want to be a beta tester. So that brings us to our subject of today, which is Vertigis Studio Item Manager. And this is Vertigis Studio's version of an AGOL Item Manager. And what we can see in here is that right out of the gate, we've got a very sort of clear forensic view of this item, including here's the license or the item's URL. Here's another item URL for stuff. But this view, here are all the URLs in the item. Well, I don't see any www austintexas.gov paths in here. So the next thing to know is to look at the item JSON. This is the same as this. You can see there's two sections in the AGOL item. There's this upper sort of header, and then there's the main body of the item. And that's also reflected here. This is the item JSON. This describes the item. And of course, we made that change to this URL in AGOL. I mean, this URL in AGOL. But where are the others? Well, that answer lies in here. So if I were on Online Assistant, I could go in here, click in there, do a Control F for find, and type www. And I see there are 4. And I say, well, take me to the first one. And it doesn't. But if I do the same thing in Vertigis Studio Item Manager, and I type www, well, it's already taking me, and there are no results. So that's good. That tells me that I shouldn't have those problems in this workflow. So let's go to the address search workflow. And right out of the gate, there's one. So if I come here, okay, well, we don't want these. So we change that to maps. Stop. Change that to maps. Save it, and we're editing the AGOL item in AGOL directly. And then I can come back here. Okay, I still have www paths in here. So now come into the main body of the workflow. And this is in a comment. So I'm not worried about that one. This is a path to our geocode server. Well, we don't want that. We want to be on maps. And there's another comment. And here's our license path. And save. And now if I go to item URLs, I don't have any WWs here. I don't have any, It's always one that wants to hide in there. And save. All right, so have I solved my problem? Let's launch it again and see. Well, we don't get a warning when we launch the app. That's a good sign. So when I execute this address search workflow, does it work? Oh, I've hit something that had a license warning, and I've hit another one that just flat out says go away. So where are these workflows? So we're going to need to know, well, what all does this workflow call? Well, if I go in here, back to my item content, and I do a Control F and I do run workflow, well, there is address search and sorry, looking for all these. Stop that now. Right. So what is this workflow that's getting called? It's called run get COA address. So if I go over here and I go to get COA address, I don't see any WWs in here. How about hiding in here? Ah, here's one. And this is a server workflow. So server workflows typically get called from other workflows. So you sort of have to root them out and find them. And they have two such paths to change here, which is the server URL that takes us to where the server workflow lives. And then also there's in the content, we need to make sure that we don't have any, and we don't. So, oops, I should have saved that when I was in there. Always remember, save early, save often. Okay, so that takes care of the server workflow. And I'll save us a lot of steps. This workflow then goes on to call this get address features workflow. And again, here's some content that has www in it. And so the three issues that tend to come up are, we have the license URL for workflows, which we can see at the top level in the HOL item. That's this path here. When we get into the item JSON, for a server workflow, you can see the license one, but you don't necessarily see the server one. So this is a very handy way to get right to it. And then, of course, the third thing you run into that we're fixing now is workflows that have embedded calls to workflows in them. So when a workflow calls a workflow that calls another workflow, you could spend quite a lot of time, one by one, going through and finding all of these. And so here's the license URL for this one. Save that one. And have we solved our problem? See how far we can get this time. Oh, still got a license. Got a little further this time. And actually, we successfully finished the workflow, but we're still getting a license warning. So if we dig a little deeper and we come in, it's like, well, we kind of clean that one up. We would find out that get address features calls this workflow to do the parcel search. And so Look in here. There's one more license URL there, and item content, double check, and there's the license URL for this workflow. And did I save my other change? I always have to go back and check because I always forget to save. Yep, I always forget to save. So hopefully we should have a clear console over here on the right as we roll through. Keeping an eye out for anything red flashing by. And we've cleaned out all the old domain references in all of our workflows that are involved in this app and on to the next application. And so the ArcGIS Studio Item Manager has provided us with a really quick, clear, concise way to look for errant URLs that we don't want to see in our AGOL items without having to really dig around one item at a time too much. Our sysops team did go into GeoJob and write a script that was able to find this URL and update it en masse for all of our AGOL items, but it didn't reach in to this part of the content very easily to find the embedded workflow calls. And so that led us into ArcGIS Studio Item Manager, where we were able to find the last few, we think we found the last few references to items that have the old domain name in them. And this is a very narrow use case for ArcGIS Studio Item Manager. A lot of people don't migrate their subdomains a whole lot, but for other issues, if you're looking for a particular workflow call or a workflow activity or a URL or some other element inside the body of your workflow, then it's very easy to come here, find what you're looking for. If you know the change you want to make, to quickly make the change here and save it and move on. So that really concludes my demonstration of how we used ArcGIS Studio Item Manager to help us finish our migration to our new maps.austintexas.gov subdomain. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. My name is Ryan Cooney. I'm on the team that builds Item Manager, and I'd like to take you through a few more aspects of Item Manager and what it's capable of doing. And also, thanks to Sean for showing that. One of the most rewarding things of being on a software development team is seeing your software put to use in the real world. And this use case is perfect. It isn't the specific one we had in mind when we built the software, but it fits perfectly. So I'll show you the very reason we built the software. It's kind of similar to what Sean showed, but slightly different use case and one that's super common. So I'm just going to go launch Item Manager. So just going to this apps.arcgisstudio.com with Item Manager on here. I'm going to sign in with my ArcGIS Online account. And I'm going to be presented with a list of my items. I'm just going to pick this web map here. And the original problem is that occasionally layer IDs would change. And actually, it's not occasional, it's quite frequent that layer IDs happen to change on your services. And if you've got a web map that's built upon that service, the web map is now confused because it's got the wrong layer ID. And that's something that's really difficult to change in any of the web map authoring tools, either of the like the map viewer that's part of ArcGIS Online. It doesn't really know how to deal with that well, and typically you'd have to remove the layer and add it back under the new name, but then you've lost all your configuration. So much like what Sean was showing, where he's looking at the content of the item, I can see for this web map, okay, here's the content for this one, and one of my operational layers typically is just an ID at the end of a URL, or like Sean's use case, changing the subdomain or the domain that this thing is on. There really isn't any other interface that's going to show you the sort of the back-end side of what your ArcGIS Online data represents. So being able to just pop into Item Manager, change that to a 1, and save it and see your application working, that was what sort of inspired the whole thing. And ourselves as well, we were using ArcGIS Online Assistant to do some of these problems. We just found it didn't quite offer us enough. There were some use cases we had that we wanted a little bit more, so that's why we built this. The other thing that I find is really cool is a lot of people will do dev test prods types of migrations for their content, and they end up with multiple items that sort of represent the development, test, and production instances of something like a web map, and being able to tell what the differences are between your web maps can help you just understand your system. It can also help you identify bugs that maybe something's misconfigured in one environment, not another. So to be able to support that use case, which is really common for us, we added the ability for Item Manager to select multiple things at a time. So here I can select my Hydrants web map as well as my production version of the Hydrants web map, and I can compare those. So I can compare the item itself. So this is sort of the configuration that represents an individual item. Not really any interesting differences in here other than the size and the title, but the real interesting stuff is the item data. So actually comparing between the left and the right side here of what are the differences between those web maps. So anytime you've got this sort of dev test prod scenario, being able to spot the differences, know what you're about to migrate from dev to production. That's kind of good. So I did just change that URL from a 0 to a 1, so that one's expected, but I've also got some different fields or pop-up element configuration that's missing in this one. So being able to understand that and be able to correct it if I can copy this content back over into this one and make my changes and make changes that way. So super tool for identifying some of these like hard to spot bugs and hard to spot differences between items. Another thing to point out here is that this editor is really powerful. We're using it's called the Monaco editor, but this is the same editor that VS Code is built on. So it's a super robust. The editor supports all kinds of things. So all kinds of find and replace. Just a super editor inside here. So it's really rich. All right, so that's kind of where Item Manager started. And then we've slowly been adding things to it over time as our dev team and as we get feedback from users. So one of my favorite things is this registered client app ID. If you've ever tried to search for an OAuth app, they're really hard to find, but we can actually just search in, plug in the app ID and search and actually find results. So going from one of these app IDs to get back to the actual item that it represents, it's a very tricky problem, but Item Manager solves that. All right, that's what I wanted to show, but this time, let's open it up to some questions. Let's see what we've got here.
Yeah, thanks to Sean and to Ryan. And again, folks, this is a no-charge product that you can access directly from the apps.vertigestudio.com website, webpage, and just start using it, log on with your ArcGIS credentials, and away you go. So yeah, we'd definitely like to open up for any questions, so please fire away.
One thing that we get asked always about this is, does it work with Portal? And yes, absolutely it does. So I'll just sign out of this one. On the sign-in page, we've got the notion of subdomains, much like you can register your organization with ArcGIS Online. Basically, you can register your subdomain with us, and then Item Manager will sign you into that specific portal. So this is one that we've got for our organization. So you can absolutely use this with your on-premises ArcGIS Enterprise, even if it's behind a firewall. As long as the end user has access to the portal, it'll work. All right. Is this a supported product? Yes, it is. So yeah, it's a free product, but it's also supported. You can send in support requests to us. The documentation for this, you can get to it right from the product. I'll just sign back into this thing. So there's a help view under here. We've got, we'll link right to what's new, but there's documentation here on our website that contains documentation for all of our products. So it's fully documented. It is supported. There's also a community. So we've got a whole community for all of our users and all of our products. You can sign into that community, ask questions, post ideas, and that sort of thing. All right, is it installable product? Is there an installer for it? No, there isn't. This is just a pure SaaS, so software as a service product. You just go to the appsforgisstudio.com website, sign in with your ArcGIS Online ID, and you can start using it. You don't need to install anything. And as I said, it'll work with your on-premises environments, like your on-premises ArcGIS portal as well. So there's not really any need to host it yourself. I think that's approaching the end of our time here. So I just want to say thank you so much all for giving us the time to share this with you. And I'd love to hear your feedback. And I'll just hand it back to Barbara.
Thanks so much, guys. Hey, and I know our users love a good deep dive. And so this has been great today. Thank you. Thanks again to Scott, Sean, and Ryan for sharing your expertise along with Brock's help with logistics. And we hope you go make it a great day. Tell a friend about ArcGIS Studio and Directions Magazine. Thanks, everybody.